Under the hospital lights, a doctor's hidden love story. The hospital never truly slept. Even at 3 a.m., when the city outside lay wrapped in darkness, the corridors of Mercy General glowed beneath harsh white lights. Machines hummed, shoes squeaked against polished floors. Somewhere, a newborn cried. Somewhere else, a family whispered prayers. Dr. Eshore Rahman stood beneath those lights, her eyes tired but steady. The fluorescent glow painted her face pale, hiding the warmth that usually lived there. To most people, she was calm, efficient, unshakable. A brilliant cardiologist who could restart a failing heart with steady hands and fearless precision. But beneath her white coat, beneath her carefully pinned hijab and her composed expression, lived a story no one knew. A story of love she never dared to speak. Eshore had chosen medicine not for prestige, but for purpose. As a child in Karachi, she had watched her father collapse one evening after dinner. A sudden heart attack. The ambulance had come too late. She was 16. The memory of the hospital lights that night never left her. They had seemed cruelly bright, illuminating her grief for the world to see. She remembered gripping her mother's hand, promising herself she would become the kind of doctor who arrived in time. Years later, she did. She studied relentlessly, graduated at the top of her class, and earned a fellowship in cardiology. She became known for her skill and her quiet dedication. Patients trusted her instantly. Nurses respected her. Junior doctors admired her discipline. But none of them knew that her heart, the organ she understood better than most, carried its own silent ache. She met Dr. Zain Malik on a rainy afternoon in the emergency department. He was new, a trauma surgeon transferred from Lahore. Tall, sharp-featured, with thoughtful brown eyes and a calm voice that steadied even the most chaotic room. Their first case together was brutal: a young man in a car accident, internal bleeding, heart arrhythmia. "Cardio consult?" Zain had asked, glancing at her across the stretcher. "I'm already here," she had replied coolly. They worked side by side for hours. No wasted movements, no unnecessary words, just instinct and trust. When the patient stabilized, Zain looked at her with quiet admiration. "You saved him." "We saved him," she corrected. That was the beginning. Under the hospital lights, their paths crossed constantly. Morning rounds, late-night surgeries, coffee breaks that were more silence than conversation. Zain was different from the others. He didn't try to impress her. He didn't flirt openly. Instead, he asked thoughtful questions about her cases. He listened when she spoke. He noticed things like how she skipped meals during long shifts, or how she always checked on elderly patients twice. Once, at 2 a.m., he found her sitting alone in the cardiology ward, staring at a heart monitor. "You've been here 12 hours, he said gently. "So have you." He handed her a cup of tea. "Even hearts need rest, Dr. Rahman." She almost smiled. "And trauma surgeons give lectures now?" "Only to stubborn cardiologists." That night, something shifted. A softness, a warmth that crept quietly into her guarded heart. But Eshore believed in control. Emotions complicated things. Hospitals were fragile ecosystems. A gossip spread quickly, and relationships could cloud judgment. More than that, her mother had always reminded her, focus first on your career. Marriage would come when it was written. Zain, she knew, came from a different world. His family was influential, traditional. They likely had expectations, arranged proposals, carefully chosen brides. So she built a wall. Professional, polite, distant. If Zain noticed, he never complained. He simply remained steady, kind, present. The turning point came on a winter evening. An elderly woman named Mrs. Fatsana was admitted with severe heart failure. She had no children, no close relatives, only a neighbor who checked on her occasionally. Eshore took special interest in her case. Perhaps it was the loneliness in the woman's eyes that reminded her of her own mother. Zain assisted in the surgery to implant a temporary ventricular device. It was risky, complicated. Under the blinding surgical lights, time felt suspended. Sweat trickled down Eshore's back as she worked, pressure dropping, a nurse warned. Zain glanced at her. "Talk to me. She's going into arrest." "Then bring her back." Their hands moved in perfect synchronization. Shock, compression, medication. For a moment, everything went silent, the monitor flatlining into a terrible, unbroken sound. And then a faint beep, another, a rhythm. Eshaw exhaled, not realizing she had been holding her breath. When the surgery ended, she stepped into the corridor, her composure finally cracking. Her hands trembled. Zain followed quietly. "You did everything you could," he said softly. "She almost died." But she didn't. The fluorescent lights flickered above them, cold and unforgiving. For once, Eshaw felt small beneath them. "What if one day I can't bring someone back?" she whispered. "What if I fail?" Zain's voice was steady. "Then you'll grieve. And then you'll keep saving the next one. That's who you are." She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw not just a colleague, but a man who understood her fears without judgment. That scared her more than anything. Weeks passed. Mrs. Fatsana recovered slowly. She began smiling when Eshaw entered the room. One afternoon, she held Eshaw's hand and said, "You care like family." The words lingered. That same day, Eshaw overheard two nurses whispering in the hallway. "Dr. Malik's parents are visiting. I heard they're looking for a bride." Her heart reacted before her mind did. A sharp, painful contraction. Ridiculous. She scolded herself. It was none of her concern. Yet when she saw Zain later, laughing politely with an older couple in the lobby, something twisted inside her. Under the hospital lights, she realized a truth she had been avoiding. She loved him. Quietly, deeply, hopelessly. Love, however, did not fit neatly into her carefully structured life. She considered distancing herself further, requesting different shifts, focusing solely on research. But fate intervened cruelly. One stormy night, an ambulance rushed in with a critical trauma case, a highway collision, severe chest injury. Eshaw felt her blood turn cold when she saw the patient. It was Zain. He had been driving home when a truck skidded out of control. Time fractured. For the first time in her career, fear clouded her judgment. Her hands shook as she assessed his vitals. Multiple rib fractures, possible cardiac contusion, someone said. She forced herself into doctor mode. He needed surgery immediately. Another surgeon stepped forward, but Eshaw shook her head. "I'm assisting." Under the glaring surgical lights, roles reversed. Zain lay unconscious, vulnerable. Machines breathed for him. She whispered a prayer as they worked. This time, she wasn't just saving a patient. She was fighting for her heart. Hours later, the surgery succeeded. He was stable, though critical. When she finally stepped out of the operating room, exhaustion crashed over her. She slid down the wall, tears streaming freely, something she hadn't allowed herself in years. The hospital lights felt different now. Not cruel, just honest. They illuminated truth. She loved him, and she could lose him. Zain regained consciousness 2 days later. His voice was hoarse. "Did we win?" She laughed shakily. "Of course we did. You look terrible. You almost died." He studied her face carefully. "You were scared." "Yes," she admitted. "For me?" The silence stretched between them, fragile and trembling. "Yes." Something softened in his eyes. "Eshaw," he whispered, "I've loved you since the night you argued with me about surgical protocols." She blinked, stunned. "That was our second meeting." "I know. You never said anything. You built walls. And you respected them," she said quietly, "because I thought you didn't feel the same." She took a steadying breath. "I was afraid." "Of me? Of losing control? Of losing you?" "Oh, far broken bar everything." He managed a faint smile. "Hearts aren't meant to be controlled, doctor. They're meant to be trusted." Tears blurred her vision again. Under the hospital lights, surrounded by beeping monitors and antiseptic air, Eshaw finally let her guard fall. "I love you too." Recovery was slow but steady. Zain's parents visited often. To Eshaw's surprise, they were warm, gracious people. They had heard about the doctor who helped save their son. "She must be remarkable," his mother said one afternoon, smiling knowingly at Eshaw. The walls she had built for years began to crumble. Months later, when Zain returned to work, the hospital buzzed with quiet celebration. He moved a little slower, laughed a little softer, but his eyes shone brighter than ever. Their relationship was no longer hidden, yet it remained dignified, professional at work. Personal in stolen moments, say shared lunches, whispered encouragement before surgeries. Mrs. Fatsana, now discharged and healthy, attended their small engagement ceremony. "You both saved my heart," she joked. "Now save each other's." The hospital lights still glowed harshly at night. Emergencies still arrived without warning. Not every patient could be saved. There were still tears, still losses. But Heshaw no longer felt alone beneath that brightness. Love had not weakened her. It had steadied her. Under the same lights that once illuminated her grief, her fear, and her hidden longing, she now stood stronger, not just as a doctor, but as a woman who had dared to open her heart. And every time she entered the operating room beside Zain, she remembered, even the most fragile hearts can survive if someone is willing to fight for them.